Looking to get quality insurance at a price you can afford? Now you can, thanks to CFM Insurance. CFM specializes in a broad range of farm, home, and rental property coverage. Find an agent right in your local area, as CFM is represented by over 150 independent agents throughout Missouri. For friendly, personal, dependable service from a well-respected leader in the insurance industry, visit cfmutual.com/agents and find an agent near you today.
Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. Election day, fall in the air. We'll jump right into the show with one of our favorite guests, former United States Senator from the great state of Missouri, Jim Talent. Welcome back to the show.
Great to be with you again.
So the perfect person to have on right now because there's a Supreme Court nomination. It's taken over a U.S. Senate race. And I mean, everybody...
Yeah, that's been in the papers. I've heard a little bit about that nomination, yeah.
Well, I've been consumed with the Cardinals, but in the background, I have seen some of these things. I wanted to ask you, what is it like? Everybody's got an opinion on the nominee or the allegations, but if you're a person in the Senate, what is it like when a judicial nomination comes up? It's controversial. What happens? Who lobbies you? How does leadership work? What is it like to be one of those 100 people that make these decisions?
That's an unusual thing because to the extent that you are lobbied, in other words, that there's influence exerted from the outside, it's within your own conference or caucus and from the people. In other words, and people always, I mean, the voters always, you'll always have emails and letters on issues. It's not so much something we hear from interest groups typically, unless it's, you will hear some advocacy, ideological type groups. And a lot depends on, at least when I was there, on what your approach is generally to the confirmation process. So my feeling was always that if the judge had a jurisprudence that made sense and seemed to have a good record, okay, I would vote to confirm them because I did not see my job as an appointment. I saw it as kind of a check, but I wasn't trying to replace the president's judgment. So a lot depends on how a senator approaches that. Now it's more and more like, do I like the guy or gal or not, and I'll vote based on that.
Well, it's about the politics, right?
And yes, and it's something like this, very, very much so. When it becomes very high profile and you're under intense pressure, absolutely they're thinking about the politics.
If you follow politics recently, you've never lived this, but as I understand it, historically is the judge qualified?
You're right.
And then the president could select, and as long as, but now it seems like, do you agree on abortion is where these things really honestly come down to?
It's how do I think this judge is going to vote on a narrow set of issues that are very controversial, abortion being one of them, which I think is a shame because the truth is that there is more than, this is going to sound oxymoronic, there's more than one mainstream to American jurisprudence, okay? And the court, I mean, so in other words, I would have voted for Elena Kagan, for example, and it would not have been that difficult, even though if I were on the court with her, I would not necessarily vote the way she voted on a lot of things. But that is an old way of looking at nominations, and it's increasingly going away in the Senate. And then I'll just add one thing, Scott. What I hate is if that's how a senator wants to vote, okay, I'm not going to vote for you because I suspect you're going to vote in ways I don't like. Okay, say that. Yeah. Don't try and destroy people personally because you don't want to be honest about why it is you're opposing their nomination. That, I think, is reprehensible, and that's what's happening now.
It's been my sense that President Obama picked some folks out of the liberal mainstream, and that Judge Kavanaugh, I'm not a lawyer, but seemed like he was a conservative mainstream person.
He's an outstanding judge, a long record on the Court of Appeals bench. He's thoughtful, and everything about him tells me he's a person of very good character. And you know, these are people we're talking about. I mean, what's happening, what people are trying to do to him and to his family, you know, is terrible. And this, unfortunately, is what politics is like today in Washington.
And to be fair, we were fortunate to record this on Thursday, really as the hearings are going on. Right. So there may be more things come out.
Yeah, I mean, look, there could be something shocking that comes out, but I don't think so. I think this guy is who he appears to be. I mean, I think he's been a person of character and prudence for a long time. And I never thought that he was guilty of any of this. Now, I do think that the first accuser, Ford, There may have been something that really happened to her in her background that was traumatic. But I don't think Kavanaugh did it. And so she's going to get a hearing, and I think Grassley's handled this well, and we'll see what happens today.
Let's talk about something else you've been outspoken on. It's Cleveland, Missouri. There's been a lot of I think maybe the court cases have maybe elevated it from, oh yeah, I'm sure that's going to pass, but people have reservations too. Now there may be more of a debate on it. What made you decide to engage on this issue?
Well, I call it gerrymander, Missouri, because it's 70% of this. Look, there's a couple things in there that deal with ethics and lobbying, and I'm all for those. I voted for things like that 100 times. But 70% of this amendment would work a massive constitutional change in how we redistrict legislative maps to require that they be gerrymandered to achieve partisan results. So what you're going to get is all these long spaghetti-like, snake-like districts. It would also put control over drawing those maps entirely in the hands of one official, which is a recipe for abuse and corruption. And there is no other state that does it like this. There are some progressive groups in St. Louis and Kansas City that don't like the fact that Democrats have run better statewide than they've run in the legislature.
Which is true.
Yeah, and I sympathize. That's how it was in reverse when I was there in the 80s. Well, my party won like every election from 1980 through 1988, and there I was sitting there, the Republican leader of a caucus with less than 40% of the seats, okay? But that's because voters vote differently for governor and Senate, or many of them do, than they do for the legislature. They split their tickets.
We mentioned some things that were changing about judicial nominations. I'm seeing that change. I'm seeing more and more voters that vote from the courthouse to the White House, one party.
Which is their choice.
And that is not the way Missouri has typically been.
Not typically, and that's their choice, okay? But the point is, the voters choose the politicians. The politicians are not supposed to choose the voters by drawing the maps in a way that game the system so the voters have to produce a certain partisan result in the legislature. And that is on its face what this is an attempt to do.
There's been allegations by different folks that oppose Cleveland, Missouri, that you could take Clayton and lump it in with West Plains. That seems unlikely.
I don't know Clayton and West Plains, but Clayton and Boone County, not only can you do that, I think you're going to have to do that. Look, so this is what this thing says. It says, and I'll just give you a hypothetical. Let's suppose the Democrats in the last three, because that's what you're supposed to look at, the last three presidential, gubernatorial, and Senate elections got 55% of vote in every one of those elections, which hasn't happened. I'm simplifying it, okay? This thing says you have to draw the maps so as to produce 55% of the seats in the House, State House and Senate for the Democrats. And in order to do that, okay, you're going to have to take little pieces of St. Louis City and draw way out into at least mid-Missouri and very far south into southern Missouri as well, particularly in the state Senate. There's going to be no other way to do it. It's a dagger at the heart, by the way, of minority representation, because those African-American communities are going to be split up. People are going to be trying to represent 10 or 12 school districts. I mean, look, a lot of the legislators, Republican legislators opposed to this, are concerned about what's going to happen to their party seats, and I understand that. But I'm concerned that this is just going to completely screw up good government in terms of the legislature. You can't represent a district that goes from Clayton out to Boone County.
I always felt like the Democrats had a point, that they were theoretically underrepresented in the legislature, but it was mostly a geographical issue when they drew the state. You have most of their people that vote Democrat are pushed in Kansas City and St. Louis, right on the state lines. You could take Columbia, where there's a sizable amount of Democrat votes, and spider those districts out.
Right, and that's what will happen, Scott. That's what will happen if this thing passes. Look, I'll give you an example of how it works and how it should work, okay, from my years. We had the same problem. We had all our votes were in southwest Missouri and basically western St. Louis County. So, yeah, Jack Danforth could win, Ashcroft could win. But you want to gain seats in the legislature, you have to recruit candidates who appeal throughout the state. So Webster County, north of Greene County, had a guy named Tommy McDonald. Dr. Tommy represented them as a Democrat, even though Webster County is like 58, 60% Republican, right?
Oh,
it wasn't.
Amish, yeah.
Yeah, what it was in those days. And Tommy and I used to laugh. We couldn't beat him because he had delivered all the people who lived in the district. Tommy could have run as a communist and carried Webster County, okay? Because people want to know their legislator. They want to think their legislator knows them, okay? So they vote differently. And this is really, what this is saying to the voters is, we're going to game the system so as to deprive you of an option that you have enjoyed and exercised for many years.
Can't let you go without asking about the U.S. Senate race. You mentioned Danforth, you mentioned Ashcroft Bond yourself. Where's the race at?
I feel very good about Josh Hawley. He's an outstanding person, and I think he has an outstanding career ahead of him in public service.
He's got a backbone of steel, doesn't he?
Yeah, he really does. He represents Missouri values well, and the race is about where I would like it for him. I think they're both somewhere in the mid-40s with a lot of undecideds, which is about what I would have expected, and I expect him to do well in November. And I think this whole Kavanaugh thing is going to help him because...
How did Senator McCaskill saying she won't vote for Judge Kavanaugh, how does that affect the race?
Oh, I think it hurts her. I think she was smart to say, as I understand it, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think she said the accusations are not the basis on which I'm making the vote, because Senator McCaskill knows that these kinds of unfair, slanders against a person are not going to sell well with anybody in Missouri. But I think the fact that she can't summon up a vote for such a good jurist who represents, I think, a lot of the values people in Missouri want, I think it's going to hurt her.
Senator, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your views.
Fun as always.
We'll be right back with our Opinion Maker panel. Representative Tracy McCreery is on the show. And in the meantime, before we go to break, check out our new show, Show Me Missouri, where we do the history of Missouri one county at a time. Go listen to our St. Clair County episode. You might find out why people in St. Clair County still talk about the Civil War so much. We'll see you after this.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople, while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads, because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
Looking to get quality insurance at a price you can afford? Now you can, thanks to CFM Insurance. Select from our broad range of farm, home, and rental property coverage. Find an agent right in your local area, as CFM is represented by a network of 200 independent agencies throughout Missouri. For personal and dependable service from a company with a history of insuring the families of Missouri that dates back to 1869, visit WeInsureMissouri.com and find an agent near you today.
At Ameren, Missouri, we know what light can do. It draws people together and chases monsters away. And if you shine it in the right direction, it will light the path for the next generation, showing them what their tomorrow could look like, and spotlighting the possibilities that lay in front of them. Investing in our community by lighting the way forward. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome this week at Missouri Politics, Opinion Maker panel time. Representative Bruce Franks, welcome back to the show.
Man, nice to be here.
Representative Tracy McCreery, welcome back.
Thank you.
Representative Derek Grier, West St. Louis County, welcome back, sir.
Pleasure to be here.
Represent the landmark of Smitty's.
Sure do.
Awesome.
Great place.
Ed John Hancock, you were a Republican before it was cool.
I don't represent anybody.
The whole state followed your lead, though. Became Republican.
Well,
you were already there. Let's talk about the Supreme Court. Obviously, we're taping this as some of the hearings are taking place. Judge Kavanaugh took some hits. Let's talk about in the context of a U.S. Senate race. I really think this race became very competitive when the Senate seat come on. They'll pick the next Supreme Court person. It made it real to a lot of Republicans. Has this tarnished that?
Well, look, this is as polarized as the country has ever been. And one of the things that I fear through this confirmation process, and it's still playing out as we're recording this, I believe our system is broken. And it used to be where lawmakers would sit down, they'd work together, these committees would function, They would function well. They would function in the interest of the American people. And in a very real sense, in my opinion, our system of government is floundering right now, and it concerns me greatly. As it relates to the Senate race, you've got the smallest undecided percentage in this race that I have ever seen in a statewide Missouri election, which tells me that the time for persuasion has passed. It's all going to be the cattle call and getting the voters turned out on Election Day, and it would appear that with the Kavanaugh hearing and everything else that's going on in the country, both sides are going to be very highly motivated to turn out. It's going to be a close race.
Tracy McCreery, if it's a turnout thing, you might have said Republicans, they have the White House, are not as motivated to turn out. Democrats are out of power, so they'd be more motivated. With the Kavanaugh hearing, it motivated a lot of Republicans. And isn't this all just a big thing about abortion?
Well, there are a lot of very important issues that are decided by a 5-4 majority at the U.S. Supreme Court level, including things dealing with the environment, voting rights, things like that. I could go on and on. But, you know, the balance of the Supreme Court is the wedge issue in the U.S. Senate race going on now between Senator McCaskill and Josh Hawley. And it's a wedge issue. And Senator McCaskill now has ample political cover to vote no against Kavanaugh, including some of his historic court decisions where he was opposed to contribution limits and things like that. But I think Hawley is going to be in big trouble over this because I think a lot of suburban women are now going to have legitimate concerns about Hawley, and Hawley will lose the support of women on November 6th.
If it's a cattle call, though, this nomination might have been a very good way to inspire folks. If it's a little more tarnished, it might hurt turnout. If this is about the Supreme Court, doesn't that help Josh Hawley?
No, I don't think it does.
Representative, if this is a cattle call and it's you got to turn your people out, can Claire McCaskill get a margin in your district that she needs to win? No. Not a percentage, but of people showing up to vote.
No, absolutely. I think when you take away what's actually happening, you take away some of like the historic decisions and the fact that he kind of bounced around. We talked about Roe versus Wade. And when you talk about the human aspect of what's going on personally, right, with women's lives, and I think the time to trust women is more than ever. And I think in my district, what I will say is that will be something that will drive turnout and just drive folks to really go towards Claire because of how Hawley has been so forceful about this particular decision.
Representative, you look at Republicans, if this is a turnout thing, it probably was good for Josh Hawley. You have a district with a lot of very educated, very normally Republican women. Does this diminish their desire to turn out?
You know, I think what people are looking for here is to see what evidence there is. And right now the Senate is doing their job. They have their meeting going on right now where they're hearing both sides of the story. That's the way it's supposed to work. We're supposed to have a system in which you're innocent until proven guilty. And it's a long way from someone making a claim to proving that that claim is true. I think that's what the process is going to weed out, and that's what people are looking to see, is what is there to support this claim.
Prediction time, who wins this Senate race, and give me a margin.
Josh Hawley, I'm going to call it 48-46 with the rest going to the third parties.
Man, it's a corollary. If this judge isn't confirmed, what does that do to the race?
I think, well, depending on how the hearing plays out and what the public opinion coming out of the hearing is, I think it has the potential of invigorating Republican grassroots in a way like we saw in 2016.
Who wins? What's the margin?
Josh Hawley. This is about ideas. It's about ideals of Missourians, their values. Josh Hawley represents those values. Josh Hawley is pro-life. He's a fiscal conservative. He's not a progressive liberal. That's what Missouri believes in.
Give me a margin, though.
I'm going to go 48-46.
Who wins?
Senator McCaskill wins, hands down.
Give me a margin, though.
Oh, gosh.
5 points, you think?
No, not 5 points. Yeah. I agree with Mr. Hancock. This is, you know, most folks have their minds made up. So this is going to be all about, you know, turnout, and it'll be a close race.
Who wins?
I say Senator McCaskill wins. Personally, I think she wins with about 51% of the vote.
In the past, you've had some reservations about Senator McCaskill.
Absolutely, but I have even more reservations about Josh Hawley. And when we talk about somebody who came in as not actually a Republican, but with independent ideas, right? I'm not going to go this way or that way, and I'm not going to climb up a ladder, and that's exactly what he's doing. And I think a lot of the Republicans that I know, who I have great relationships with, they're not happy about that, and they're more happy about Claire's fight for health care.
Today, you look somebody in the eye, a person looks up to you in your community, you can tell them to vote for Claire McCaskill, no reservations.
I can tell them to vote for Claire McCaskill.
Yeah. Let's talk about Amendment 1, Clean Missouri. It's been on the ballot, off the ballot. Right now it looks like it's on the ballot. You heard Senator Talent tell folks it's about gerrymandering districts. You have a district that folks could maybe draw out to Boone County under his scenario. Why is it good?
Well, that, to me, that idea of trying to scare voters into thinking the districts aren't going to be compact and contiguous is just crazy. So they're trying to distract from the real issue. What Clean Missouri, or what Amendment 1 is going to do, is it's going to actually clean up the Missouri legislature, and voters overwhelmingly want that to happen. Sure. So we can have these conversations about spaghetti districts, but it's just not the fact. People actually need to read the language.
Tell me, though, right now, are the districts not compact?
Well, they're fairly compact, but my district has one person's house drawn out of it just so that he didn't have to run, in my district. So, I think those are the things that voters don't like. Voters do not like the idea that a district's drawn specifically to benefit one person.
John Hancock, you've actually sat in a room with a pencil and helped draw maps before.
Been doing it for many years.
The stuff about lobbyist gifts, I think, is irrelevant. It's always funny to me to watch editorial boards who have lobbyists working for them decry lobbyists. But in this situation,
it's a smokescreen to politicize the redistricting process. Period. The end. That's what this.
Pretty good smokescreen, though.
And absolutely. But here's the thing: we have a process in place in this state, and it's a bipartisan commission appointed. They sit down. You've got to get a supermajority of those people to agree on the maps. If they can't, then it goes to the courts. That is a systematic way of doing redistricting. It involves multiple branches of government. It is good for our system of government to do it the way we do it. What we are proposing here is to take all of that and vest it in one statewide office. It happens to be the only statewide office held by a Democrat. And where they're doing this in other states, Scott, they're doing it not with the auditor's office. They're doing it, if the Democrats have a lieutenant governor, they're putting redistricting in the lieutenant governor's office. This is blatantly political, and I'm very, very discouraged about it.
I've heard every Republican House member. I've not seen one of them that like this.
I'll tell you what we do like about it is the ethics reform part of it, right? Yeah. This is a wolf in sheep's clothing, and the dressing is the ethics reform. Nobody I know is against the ethics reforms that are a part of this bill. It's not going to have any meaningful change, but we're not against it. In fact, in the House, the last few years running, we've passed very similar measures. This is a
Tell me the Post-Dispatch lobbyists won't be able to buy people lobbyist gifts anymore?
This is a tactic by Democrats who have been unsuccessful in convincing voters at the ballot box of their ideas, and this is a way to try and destroy the bipartisan system that we have in place right now that works. And in fact, other states are modeling what we're doing because it works so well. It's an attempt to destroy that and jerry-rig the system.
Now, Representative, I believe that you have one of the most normal perspectives of people I know. You told me once you weren't even aware there was a state auditor for a while. It looks like Democrats didn't pull the elected official. They want to draw the maps out of a hat, right?
Right. And I think if we talk about our elected officials, even our statewide elected officials, one of the persons who have been truly fair at going after everybody is our state auditor. But let's take it away from that. Anytime I have an amendment, right, and we have a part where it codifies our Voting Rights Act, right, which we've seen that at the Supreme Court, what they've been doing is punting back to the states a lot of times when it comes to redistricting. But outside of that, anytime I have Republicans telling me that my minority district is going to be hurt, minority representation is going to be hurt. Like, out of all of these things that I've been talking about the last 2 years, we talk about minority issues and challenges and barriers. The one thing that you're worried about, the one thing you're going to get loud and boisterous about, is the fact that we're not going to have representation. So if that doesn't raise flags,
I don't think they care either. But if you've read this, do you think it's possible this could lead to fewer districts represented by minorities?
Well, you know what? Looking at it, I'm not sure. What I will say is there are parts of Clean Missouri that I really like, and there are parts of, especially when we talk about our Voting Rights Acts and codifying the Voting Rights Acts, because at the end of the day, we've seen what the Republican Party has tried to do with our Voting Rights Acts across the United States. So I think that's a very important piece of it.
Prediction, yeah, go ahead.
Well, for decades in this country, Republicans and African-American legislators have come together in precisely one area, and it's redistricting. And it's not because Republicans are magnanimous. It's not because Republicans. It's because the interest collide, that both have the same interest. If you're going to increase Democrat members of the legislature, and you're going to draw districts that do that, you're going to take Democrat votes tend to be clustered in highly dense areas. There are dozens of 90% Democrat precincts in this state. There are hardly any 90% Republican precincts in this state. So if you're going to increase the number of Democrat elected officials, you're going to take those 90% areas, pockets, and you're going to disperse them into a multiple number of districts. That will inherently reduce the number of African American.
Well, give me a prediction here.
So are you saying that Republicans won't vote for an African American then?
No, they do. They do. But what I'm saying is, if you take a pocket of 90% African American votes that's in a community, it's in a contiguous area, and you disperse them out to 3 different districts, you're going to reduce the relative influence of African American voters in any of those particular districts, and the chance that you're going to have one or more of those elect a Caucasian Democrat increases, and that's my point.
I think what the voters want is they want to have real choices when they go to vote, and voters are sick of going to vote in a general election and there's only one candidate, so they want choices, and I think this gets there. And I think that it's not about the auditor, it's about a demographer taking the first swipe. So I don't know why you're politicizing a demographer.
Well, everything's political. This week in Missouri politics. Does it pass?
I hope not, but it probably does.
Under this plan, how many seats would the Democrats pick up?
Half a dozen in the House and 1 or 2 in the Senate.
Yeah. So if this pass?
Not if voters understand what it's really all about.
So we're saying yes then?
I'm saying no. I think I believe in Missouri voters and that the truth will get out and they will understand what this is truly about and they will defeat it.
Give me a prediction.
It's going to pass overwhelmingly 60-40, and you know what? Republican legislators I talk to think that the legislature will run better with a little bit more balance.
How many seats do Democrats pick up if they under this plan?
Oh, I have no idea.
What do you think?
So
they're not doing to pick up none.
I think so. What I will say is, I think it passes. And one thing I heard from Republicans often is elections have consequences, and we just saw it with right to work.
You hear it all the time?
And they understood statewide exactly what that meant, and we showed them. So I think it passes.
Well, who winning the week has consequences? John Hancock, who won the week?
Ann Wagner. She's picking up endorsements from a lot of law enforcement groups. Her campaign is on fire right now. It's the only maybe competitive congressional seat in the state, and she's going to win it.
Who won the week?
Missouri workers won. We've gotten a lot of big contracts. Boeing just landed a huge contract here. Arthur Express is expanding their headquarters in St. Louis. A lot of good things happening in the business world and economic development in Missouri.
Representative McCreery, who won the week?
I would say the voters did, because now they'll get a chance to vote yes on Amendment 1 to clean up Missouri politics. It's back on the ballot.
Who won the week?
We should do a who lost the week one time. But who won the week is our 5th Ward committee man, Rasheen Aldridge. He has done an amazing job organizing throughout the community, as well as with our party, into those disenfranchised areas that's been forgotten about. And when it talks about minimum wage, like, he's one of the most loud voices.
We're going to hear more.
Absolutely.
I'm going to say Dan McLaughlin, Tuesday night, his rant united everyone in a tough and very emotional Oktoberfest. I say Dan McLaughlin won the week. We hope you'll win the week next week by joining us here on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics, sponsored by CFM Insurance, the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts, Spire, and Sterling Bank.